As part of your pack, you should have a Ziploc bag containing 2 cut out Christmas trees, a felt star, some thread, one that's gold, like this one, and a variety of other threads, some beads, a battery, and a battery holder. With these items, we're going to make a decorative light up electric Christmas tree. What there also would have been in an envelope I dropped off later was an LED. The LED has got some curly ends which I've pre-done to enable you to help sew it on. One leg is a positive side, which is the leg I'm holding, and the other, and it's curling out. If I change my fingers around, and it's curling out. And the leg that's curling into the middle is the negative side. And you can test your LED by putting it against the battery and you'll see it light up. When you look at your battery, you will notice that on one side there is a plus side, which is the positive side, and the other side hasn't got anything on. And if you put your LED, so the curly side is the positive side on it, and the negative side, not very good at doing this with the video, you can see it lights up. So the outer curly one and the inner one, so it goes on like that. And as you can see, it lights up. If I can hold it in the right place. The idea is for us to put all these items together and to make this Christmas tree light up. On the battery holder, which the battery will fit in, there is an on-off switch, which will enable us to turn it on and off when we want. There is also positives and negatives, and this will determine on how we sew it all together with this special gold thread, which is in your pack, which is conductive. The other colours which you've got are not conductive, so it will only be the gold thread we will use to create the electric circuit. When you sew it all together, you'll be connecting the negative connection point on the battery holder to the negative leg on the LED, and then the same connecting the positive part on the battery holder to the positive leg on the LED. When cutting the thread, you want a piece of thread about 30 centimetres or slightly longer. You don't want it shorter. 30 centimetres is also just slightly longer than a length of piece of paper, A4 paper. When you've threaded the needle using the needle threader, you then start to sew on the battery holder, and you want the battery holder placed at the bottom of the tree with the switch right at the bottom. And you're going to start by sewing with the negative bit using over sewing. So you start off by bringing your thread through from the back and up through the hole, and then when it's through the hole you then go down. So you're going down and then finding the hole and coming back up again. You need to do that a few times. Once you've done it 3 or 4 times, we're going to then do a running stitch, which is going in and out the material up to near the top. You can either do it like I've just done that stitch, or you can do it so you're going through. And we're going to do these stitches to near the top of the tree because we want the light at the top of the tree because that's where the star goes. So once we've got near to the top, we can then stop for a minute. To enable sewing the LED on, what I've done is I've bent the legs forward so it can sit, so it's like it's sitting down, and then we work out where we want to position it. As said before, the leg curling into the middle is the negative and the leg curling out is the positive. So in this case, I've started sewing at the negative. So I'm then going to carry on and sew the negative leg on. And as I said, I've pre-curled the bits. So holding it in place, I'm then going to over sew like I did with the battery holder. So going over a few times to hold it in place. And what this is creating the thread is conductive, so it's allowing the electricity to go from the battery to the LED. So this is the negative side that's done, and we repeat the process for the positive side. When you've got over sewn that a few times, sort of 3 or 4 times, you can turn over to the back, and where you've got the over sewing, you can go underneath it, bring your needle through, take your needle through the loop, and that will fasten off your stitches. An important part of when you're sewing the lights and the battery holder together is, as I mentioned, you sew the negative to the negative and the positive to the positive. You also need to make sure that the threads you sew don't cross each other, and as you come from the bottom on the positive, that you don't actually touch the rest of the battery holder. When you've got to this stage, you can then actually test that it all works. At the bottom there is a switch, which is the on-off switch. If you put it to the off when you put your battery in, it is a tight fit, and what you want is you want the positive at the top, and then when you switch on, your light should be on. When you're happy that you've got everything to work, because the battery holder is very tight, you switch off the battery holder into the off position, so your light has gone off, and then you, holding the battery holder, you then push the battery in. It's got these little clips here which hold the battery in place, and then switch on, and you have the start of your Christmas tree decoration. What we next have to do is, using the non-conductive thread, we can take the front piece of our Christmas tree, and we have the stars beads. We can sew some of them on to the front so it looks a bit like baubles or Christmas tree decorations. When you sew your baubles on, sort of the star beads, you work out what colour you want to use to sew on. I've picked the red thread. I've threaded my needle. I'm going to tie a knot in the bottom. And then what I'm going to do is work out where I want it placed. Come in through the bottom. So I'm coming through from the reverse side. And then the stars have got a hole which goes through it, and a little bit tricky on video, and then you sew it in place. And like when we were sewing the battery holder and the LED on, we want to do 3 or 4 stitches so it holds the bead in nice and tight. It helps to hold the bead while you're sewing it, and then you can pull the thread through tight. So as I said, do this 3 or 4 times. And then when you have done that, on the reverse side, turn it over and you can pick up some of those stitches that you've sewn. So just push your needle through like I'm doing, and where you've got this loop, put your needle through the loop, and that's like tying a knot. And then use your scissors and cut it. And you can keep doing this until you've used all the beads on the front that you want to. As I said, remember when sewing on the beads and also the hanging ribbon, and when you put it all together, when we sew the top of the tree onto the back of the tree with the electronics, we use the ordinary thread, which is in the variety of colours. You've got reds and greens and purples, but you don't use the gold thread again. This is the electric current one, and it could confuse your circuit. Once you've sewn the baubles on that you want to, or the beads that are acting as your baubles, you need to sew the hanging ribbon on. In your pack, or one of the packs, there was a piece of ribbon, and I seem to remember there was 2 colours, so you can choose which colour you want. And you loop it in half, and on the back of the electronic bit, you sew it on, just doing some stitches over and over, and then fastening off. So now you have the hanging part and the decorative bit. What you have also got, and you're going to be needing, is your star. And what will happen is this part hasn't got a hole in, so you need to line it up and work out where you're going to put your hole. And then grabbing your scissors, you need to make your hole for it to go through. My scissors aren't the best in the world for little snips. Once you've cut your hole in the top one, you're going to be layering it over. So push it through and push it right down so the LED comes out. And then on top of that, your star, which I've already pushed a hole on. You might want to cut it a bit bigger, and your star goes on. So as you can see, your Christmas tree is beginning to form. And if I switch the light on again, you can see it's now a shining star. So the final thing we'll need to do, once I switch off the battery again, is we need to sew it together. But all we're going to do is sew around the edges, but we're going to leave the bottom free because that will enable you to be able to still get to the battery to switch it on and off. When you sew it, you can either use a contrasting colour, so say red, to go around it, or you can pick your green thread and sew around it. I've now stitched all the way around the edge of the tree. And as you can see, I've gone through the edge. At the back, it's sort of reasonably neat, not the prettiest, but it will do. And then once you've got it like that, the final bit to do is to push your star on and to get it to point north. One of the things to remember is this is electronics and you don't want to leave it on all the time. And that is it with it switched on and lit. So hanging up, it will be pretty and sparkly on your tree.